I'm the middle child of 3 boys. My brothers were both involved in scouting growing up. The oldest reached Eagle Scout, while the youngest eventually dropped out. For some reason, my parents never pushed me into it. It was always a bit strange to me because I remember feeling a deep sense of envy toward my older brother, Scott, whenever I'd tag along with my mom to his Pinewood, derby races and troop events. The thing I craved most, though, were the weekend campouts where the troop would head into the wilderness. Once or twice I went along for the ride along, seeing them ignite campfires and pitch their gear. But since I wasn't a member and was still too small, I was never permitted to stay behind. I'd always end up heading back home with my parents. My obsession with those trips was fueled by watching my brother get ready. Before a big outing, he'd bring a tent home to practice setting it up in our yard. Even though I was only 7 or 8, I vividly recall the excitement I felt when I came up with the plan to do some camping in our own backyard. The plan was simple: pitch the tent and spend the night outside. To a kid my age, it was the ultimate adventure. Our yard wasn't exactly typical. We lived in a neighborhood with massive, open lots that bled into one another. Instead of fences, there were thickets of trees and brush dividing the properties, which really sold the wilderness vibe. Because our yard was so large and featured a fire pit, our parents played along and helped us set everything up for the full experience. My little brother joined us for roasted marshmallows, too, though he wasn't allowed to sleep out there with us. He was only 4 at the time, and obviously not a scout yet. So our parents brought him inside once it got late. After we crawled into our sleeping bag, Scott and I pulled out our Game Boy SPs. I was deep into Super Mario Bros. 2, a game I was obsessed with but could never actually finish back then. Eventually, I got tired and rolled over to sleep, but I was restless. Maybe it was the unfamiliarity of the sleeping bag, but I just couldn't get comfortable. A significant amount of time passed before I finally drifted off. When I eventually woke up, I was disoriented. Looking around the dim interior of the tent, I realized Scott's sleeping bag was empty. The zipper was still shut, so I figured he'd just gone inside because he couldn't sleep. Suddenly, being alone in the tent terrified me. I moved to the door and unzipped it, but I didn't rush out. I took a cautious peek first, just to make sure the coast was clear. It wasn't. Someone was sitting right by the fire pit in the dark. It wasn't my brother. It was a grown man. He was staring directly at the tent, and there was no way he hadn't seen me. I gasped, zipped the tent shut, and retreated into my sleeping bag as if that thin layer of fabric could actually protect me. I stayed frozen. The only light was a dull gray glow filtering through the tent walls from the moon. I wanted to scream for my dad, hoping desperately it was him, but I knew better. If it had been him, he would have said something when I poked my head out. Then, I heard the chair by the fire shift. I was terrified, praying he wouldn't approach. But then a shadow fell across the tent, cutting off the moonlight. He was right there. I held my breath, hoping he'd think the tent was empty if I didn't move. Then came the sound of the zipper, slowly, steadily sliding down. It only opened a few inches, but that was plenty. I couldn't help but look. There's usually a tiny gap at the very bottom, where the zippers don't quite meet, and pressed against that gap was a single eye, staring straight at me. I could see the white of it in the darkness. I was paralyzed with fear for several seconds. Then the eye squinted, almost like the person was grinning a hidden smile. The zipper moved another inch, and that's when I finally found my voice and screamed. I scrambled back, kicking my way out of the bag and knocking over the tent poles. Footsteps immediately thundered away through the grass. Our porch light flicked on, and I heard my dad burst out the back door, shouting. By the time he got to the fire pit, the stranger was gone. The police were called, and I spent the rest of the night in my parents' bed. I was shaken for a long time, but just as life started to feel normal again, maybe a month later, something happened that I'll never forget. I attended a Catholic school, and during lunch, we had recess in a concrete schoolyard. One end was fenced off near the street. We were playing a game, maybe red light, green light, and I had to run to the fence to be safe. While I was standing there with some other kids, a man on the other side of the fence said, "Hey!" He asked for directions to somewhere I didn't know. I told him I didn't know, mindful of the rule about not talking to strangers. Then he said, "Your name's Chris, right?" My heart stopped. I recognized the voice in the face. I lied and said no. He just smiled and whispered, "You don't remember me, do you?" I bolted toward a teacher and pointed back at the fence, but he was already gone. Another kid confirmed they'd seen him too. Recess was ended early, and my parents were called. I was certain it was the man from our yard. I can't stop thinking about what might have happened. If he'd actually managed to take me that night, it makes me sick to wonder if he ever did that to someone else. Story 2. The open house. I grew up in Salem, Oregon, which has a very small town feel. I moved out at 21, buying a place about 50 miles away. To furnish it, I used a mix of hand, meat downs and items from online marketplaces. At the time, I was driving a Ford Raptor, which made hauling furniture easy. I found a Facebook marketplace listing that looked like a digital yard sale. I was interested in a pristine cream, colored sectional, and a Cannondale mountain bike. The seller was brief and easy to negotiate with, agreeing to a lower price and telling me to come by that evening. In the Oregon summer, the sun stays up late, so I knew I'd have light. I drove out toward the coast, checking the satellite map to confirm the location. It was a massive property with a long driveway and a backyard that dropped off right into the ocean. I figured the owners were wealthy and just wanted the stuff gone. The closer I got to the water, the nicer the houses became. I turned onto a long, wooded road and eventually found the dirt driveway. After a short drive through the trees, the path opened into a clearing with a huge house on a hill. I parked next to a beat-up old sedan, a Mercury Sable or something similar, that looked totally out of place next to such a mansion. On the front door, a yellow post-it note read, "Doorbell broken. Please use back door." It felt a little off, but I followed the instructions. I messaged the seller that I'd arrived and started walking around the side of the house. Every window I passed had the blinds tightly shut. When I reached the back, the view of the Pacific was incredible. I knocked on the sliding glass door, which also had its blinds closed. No one answered. I checked my phone, no reply. I sat on a deck chair for a moment, watching the sunset, before deciding to walk down to the cliffside to take a photo of the view while I waited. After taking the picture, I turned back toward the house. I froze. Every single window now had its blinds wide open, and at every single window, a person was standing perfectly still, like a statue. I thought it might be a prank until I got closer and realized every one of them was smiling at me. They were so motionless I couldn't tell if they were even real people or mannequins. I didn't wait to find out. I broke into a jog back to my truck. The side window that had been closed before was now open, with someone standing there too. I jumped in my car and didn't even look at the front windows as I reversed down the driveway. Just before I left, I caught a glimpse of the front porch. The door was wide open, and a man was standing there with his hands in his pockets, just watching me leave. I drove to the nearest neighbor's house and told them what happened. The neighbor, Tom, was baffled. He was close friends with the owner and said the guy was rarely in town and definitely wouldn't pull a stunt like that. He called the owner. Jim, right then. Jim was alarmed because he wasn't even in the state. I described the man on the porch and the sketchy sedan. Later that night, Jim called me back. He'd contacted the police, but by the time they arrived, the sedan was gone. The blinds were all closed again, and the house was empty, though all the doors had been left unlocked. The Facebook listing and the profile I'd messaged had both vanished. I still wonder why they wanted me to go to the backyard and what would have happened if I'd stayed. Story 3. The Late Night Swimmer. I live with my parents in Murrysville, Pennsylvania. One weekend while they were away, I decided to host a small pool party. Our backyard is very private, bordered by thick woods that stretch back half a mile. On Saturday afternoon, I was setting up tables for the party. It was quiet until I heard a distinct, deliberate cough from the tree line. It was a man clearing his throat, and it sounded close enough that he could definitely see me. I froze, scanning the trees. I called out, "Who's there?" But there was no reply. No movement, no sound of someone walking away. That silence felt heavier than the cough itself. I felt like eyes were on me, uncomfortable. I grabbed my things and went inside, later asking my friend Mark to come over early. I didn't mention the cough because I didn't want to seem paranoid. The party went well, about 20 people showed up, and with the music and lights, the woods didn't feel threatening anymore. By 1:00 a.m., everyone had left. I did a quick sweep of the yard, locked the sliding door, and went up to bed. I was almost asleep when I heard a loud splash. Not a small object, but the sound of someone diving into the deep end. Then, the rhythmic sound of someone swimming laps. I knew everyone had gone home. I crept to the window without turning on the lights. Down in the pool, a stranger was calmly swimming. The pool lights illuminated his face. I'd never seen him before in my life. "Who is that?" I yelled out the window. The man stopped and looked up. He wasn't startled. He just stared. Then he climbed out of the pool. He was incredibly tall and started walking toward the house. He didn't run. He marched directly toward the sliding door. I yelled again, but he didn't stop. Then, I heard the sliding door open. I know I locked it, but I heard it slide open and shut. I ran to my bedroom door and locked it, my hands shaking. I called 911 and whispered that someone was in my house. Then I heard the footsteps, wet, rhythmic thuds on the hardwood. He was walking straight for the stairs. He climbed them slowly. I heard the hallway floor creak as he stopped right outside my door. I could hear water dripping onto the floor. He tried the handle. Once, twice, then a third time harder. The operator was talking, but I couldn't focus. Then came 3 slow knocks. I put the phone on speaker and shouted that the police were on their way. After a long silence, a low, calm voice said from the other side, "It's me. Open the door." I told him I didn't know him and to leave. After a few more seconds of silence, I heard him turn and walk away. The front door slammed shut shortly after. When the police arrived, the only evidence was a trail of water leading from the back door, up the stairs, right to my bedroom. None of my friends knew who he was. I'm convinced it was the same man I heard coughing in the woods that afternoon. I still don't know how he got in or what he wanted.